Okay. Ay, naku, na-share screen ko daw. Okay. Okay. So, good morning, class. Today will be the orientation with the histology of the lungs. And you are very fortunate that you had your lecture a while ago. So, this first slide will just show you the branching of the the branches of the lungs. Okay. So we started with the trachea. It will divide into the primary bronchi, the left and the right. But as you can see from this picture, we will refer to the secondary, beginning the secondary and then the tertiary bronchi and the smaller bronchi as intrapulmonary bronchi. Intrapulmonary bronchi. Okay, so we will obviously the primary and secondary will not be seen within the lung parenchyma. But all bronchi, the branches of which will start with the secondary and beyond, will be referred to as intrapulmonary bronchi. Okay? Now, we have, you were taught that the covering of the lungs is made of what we call the pleura. And the pleura is made up of a visceral and a parietal pleura. Now, this lining is it is lined with what we call a single layer of mesothelial cells. And these mesothelial cells are commonly made up of flattened mesothelial cells, meaning to say it is squamous. But textbooks will also say that the lining epithelium could also be, aside from flattened cells, it could also be cuboidal cells or low columnar cells. But to be uniform, it is composed of a single layer of mesothelial lining. And of course, it is supported by a thin basement membrane, okay? This visceral pleura here. Okay, so that is the pleura of the lungs. But of course, class, tandaan ninyo that there will be underlying fibrous supporting tissue here. Okay, it's primarily of collagen and elastic fibers. Okay, so that is the visceral pleura. Next, okay, now that branch which I referred to as intrapulmonary bronchus, and probably you already remember from the lecture that the intrapulmonary bronchus, also known as the segmental, also known as the tertiary bronchus, it is lined with respiratory epithelium. And you already know the 5 cells that make up the respiratory epithelium. But collectively, the respiratory epithelium is called pseudostratified columnar ciliated with goblet cells. And indeed, class, this one, the intrapulmonary bronchus has tall columnar, pseudostratified columnar cells, but then the pseudostratification is a little less compared to what is seen in the other respiratory epithelium in the higher branches of the respiratory tree. But with the intrapulmonary bronchus, yes, it is lined with respiratory epithelium. And in the lamina propria, it is, you can see here, thin and elastic smooth muscles. Okay, so what you see here are thin and thin spiral bands of muscle, smooth muscle cells here. Okay, yun ang makikita natin sa lamina propria. And aside from that, there are few elastic fibers here. But of course, class, the elastic fibers could not be appreciated in this kind of staining because elastic fibers need special stains. So again, class, the lining epithelium is respiratory epithelium. Underneath is a lamina propria that is composed of spiral bands of smooth muscles. And we can also appreciate here thin elastic fibers. Okay, now, what makes the intrapulmonary bronchus very different from the other branches underneath it. No? So the submucosa of the intrapulmonary bronchus contains glands, okay, sparse glands, and the start of the show, these are the irregular plates of cartilage. Okay, it is also known as broken plates of what type of cartilage? It is hyaline cartilage. And the adventitia will show few lymphoid tissue. Now, this next picture will just be an enlarged picture, no? The respiratory epithelium, do not forget, pseudostratified columnar ciliated epithelium with the presence of these goblet cells. And in the lamina propria, we can see here smooth muscles, and we also know that the lamina propria has few thin elastic fibers. Now, in the submucosa, we can see here glands, and of course, these broken plates of hyaline cartilage. Possible questions will be identify specific structure. No, these are the broken plates of hyaline cartilage. Could also be a specific subtype of tissue, hyaline cartilage. Subtype cartilage. Okay, so this one is the adventitia, and we just can see, yes, we can appreciate presence of lymphoid tissue, yung mga scattered lymphocytes here. Okay, so this is intrapulmonary bronchus. Now, after the intrapulmonary bronchus, it branches out, becomes thinner, and this is what we call the bronchiole. So these are the smallest branches of the bronchiolar tree, okay, and they are referred to as bronchioles. Now, what we see here, the main difference between the intrapulmonary bronchi and the bronchiole is its absence of that supporting cartilage and glands. But before that, we know that the lining epithelium of the bronchiole is ciliated columnar and cuboidal cells. But we can still appreciate the presence of few goblet cells. Probably it was told to you that there is also sometimes pseudostratification here, but it is generally or most of the time it is really lined with a single layer of ciliated columnar and cuboidal cells. So makikita ninyo that it is scalloped. Okay, why do you think this is scalloped? Because in the lamina propria, we can see here that it is associated with plenty of these smooth muscles. Kaya nagkakaroon ng contraction in the lining epithelium. And as I have mentioned a while ago, this will be devoid of the presence of glands, the submucosal glands, and the hyaline cartilage. But what we see here is this prominent smooth muscles. Okay, so this is what we call bronchiole. Now, to be followed by terminal bronchiole. Ano naman ang difference between the bronchiole and the terminal bronchiole? Now, the terminal bronchiole, from the term itself, it's called terminal. Anong terminal? Mamamatay na? No. This is the last part of the air conducting system before it goes into actual gas exchange. Okay? So this is the terminal bronchiole, and the terminal bronchiole is lined with, hindi yan tuberculosis, terminal bronchiole yan. It is lined with cuboidal cells, okay, a single layer of cuboidal cells alternate with many low, take note, non-ciliated columnar cells. And I can guess that you know what these columnar cells, non-ciliated columnar cells, no? You call them the exocrine bronchiolar cells, aka club cells, aka formerly called the Clara cells. Okay? Yung si Clara cells, hindi siya babae, apelido yan. It was discovered by Dr. Max Clara, kaya Clara cells. But we will not refer to it as Clara cells anymore. The new name is club cells. Siguro golfer yung nag-name nito. Or it is better known as the bronchiolar exocrine cells. Okay? So these are the non-ciliated dome-shaped apical. They have non-ciliated dome-shaped apical ends, and those apical ends contain secretory granules. But we cannot appreciate them. The club cells could not be seen separately here in this picture. Okay, next. What is next after terminal bronchiole? We have respiratory bronchiole. So makikita nyo class, now please differentiate these two. Terminal, that is the end of conducting portion. Respiratory is the beginning of actual gas exchange. That is the branch where actual gas exchange actually happens. And both of them have the same common features, no? So, is this lined with alternate, cuboidal, and non-ciliated columnar, yung terminal. The same is true. The respiratory bronchiole, it is also lined with cuboidal and ciliated. So meron din siyang club cells. So what's the difference between the two? In respiratory bronchiole, it opens now into areas that are already squamous or flat cells because this will be the start of actual gas exchange. And what do you call these openings? These are what we call the alveolar sacs, the alveolar ducts, the alveoli. So the difference now between the terminal and the respiratory bronchiole is respiratory bronchioles have openings to simple squamous epithelium. And that is represented by the structures like alveolar sacs, alveolar ducts, and alveoli. Okay, so yun ang kanyang difference from the terminal bronchiole. I have a mnemonic here. No? After the intrapulmonary bronchus or bronchi, we start with better bronchiole, better BTR. No? Bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, and then respiratory bronchiole. And you know what comes after the respiratory bronchiole. Okay, so again, class, this respiratory bronchiole, they also still contain the elastic connective tissue. They also have very few smooth muscles. Okay, now after the respiratory bronchiole, it is followed by the alveolar duct. Now this time, the alveolar duct is large, no, compared to the other ones here. The alveolar sacs, alveolar alveoli. Okay, so there are three terms that you have to know. Alveolar duct, ito siya malaki. Okay, yan yung duct, and it connects to the other structures. If you see a grape-like structure such as this one, no, you call that the alveolar sac. And if it is individual like this one, parang isang circle na yan, we call them alveoli, plural, pag singular, alveolus. And all of them, these three structures, are lined with squamous cells. Okay? They are lined with squamous cells, but however they are so thin, they are still being, you can still appreciate strands of smooth muscles, elastic fibers, and collagen fibers. Okay? Okay, now parang ang tawag dito in Filipino is chop suey, no? Ulam na chop suey, you put everything there. So what you see here, I have a picture here of intrapulmonary bronchus. So what do you see in the intrapulmonary bronchus? In the submucosa, do not forget the presence of the broken plates of hyaline cartilage. As I mentioned in section B kanina, this is like the one that I taught you, no? Nung tungkol sa lymphatic nodule. What did I tell everyone about the lymphatic nodule? It is composed of B lymphocytes. So the lymphatic nodule is the buccal, B for buccal, B for B lymphocytes. It's the same thing. If you see this broken plate of cartilage, yun na yun. That is intrapulmonary bronchus. bronchioles. Okay? Now, the intrapulmonary bronchus is followed by the bronchiole, pero wala akong picture dito. So what is the bronchiole made up of? It's ciliated columnar cells alternate with cuboidal cells. Ciliated columnar cells with alternating with cuboidal cells. And because it is composed of very thin, thick, smooth muscles, there is contraction of the lining epithelium. But no more, it is devoid of devoid of glands and also of the cartilage. After the bronchiole, B, magiging T, no? Terminal bronchiole. Terminal bronchiole and respiratory bronchiole, both of them, they have they are composed of low columnar cells. These are the non-ciliated low columnar cells, also known as the club cells, and there is alternate with cuboidal cells. Bakit magkadikit sila? Of course, isang branch yan. But then, when we reach to this respiratory bronchiole, what we can appreciate is that there are openings already into alveolar sacs, alveolar ducts, alveoli. Hence, there are openings for simple squamous epithelium. Okay? So, sinabi ko sa inyo, pag medyo malaki na siya, mahaba, like this one, mahaba yan, no? So that is what we call the alveolar duct. Now, if it looks like a grape, like this one, parang grape siya. That's an alveolar sac, and this one is what we call an alveolus. Plenty is alveoli. And it was taught to you, class, that in the alveoli, no, we can see there two types of cells, the type 1 and the type 2, and type 2 is the one that secretes surfactant. Now, this one was lifted from Junquera, but I made a correction here because in Junquera, in the text, no, it was put there that alveolar sacs, alveolar ducts are lined with simple squamous cells. But if you will look at your book, in the table, it says there's simple squamous at meron pang cuboidal. Inalis ko na yon for purposes of to avoid confusion among us. Okay, so make sure that you know that the alveolar ducts and sacs and the alveolar are made up of simple squamous cells. But that's because most of them are squamous, but you can see type 2. These are cuboidal cells, no? They are the ones that secrete surfactant. Okay? So, pero generally, class, ducts, sacs, and alveoli are lined with simple squamous cells. Kasi 95% of them are composed of simple squamous cells. Okay? So, that will be the end of my orientation. If you have questions, you may ask them now or forever hold your peace. Section B. Naku, nagmamadali ako para dun sa naka-data, kakaawa naman. Do you have questions? I will not force you to ask.